Okay. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first formal meeting since January of the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee. Good to see you all. Obviously, this meeting is a virtual meeting, and due to the current COVID regulations, today's meeting is held using audio conferencing and available for the public to listen to via an audio feed on the agenda page on our website or via the Council's YouTube channel. Members and other participants should only speak when invited to do so, and if possible, will everyone ensure that their microphones are on mute when they are not addressing the committee. And also, if you wish to speak, can you put your hand up on the little sort of icon, little hand icon, and when you've finished speaking, if you can turn it off. So I don't think that you want to speak again. So if we move swiftly on to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence, and I think, as far as I'm aware, I think we've had apologies from Lynn Fowler and is it Carol Morgan? Is that correct, Kieran?
That's correct, Chair. Okay.
Item number 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest? No, we're okay on that one. Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Has everyone had a copy of those? Those are the January meetings. And if we could confirm them as a correct record. Is everyone happy to do that? You can just have a show of hands. That would be helpful. Thanks very much. Lovely. Any matters arising from those minutes? Are we all okay with them? Okay. Thanks very much. Right, item number 4 is the terms of reference, and that's to approve the committee's terms of reference for the municipal year 2020 to 2021. I think you've all had a copy. I think there was just a couple of amendments on those terms of reference, which is item 5. I think that's an addition, I think, isn't it, Anthea? As well,
yes,
just
Chair.
Really.
Yes.
So if everyone's happy with those terms of reference, can we have an agreement on them by show of hands, if that's okay? Lovely, thank you very much. Right, item 5, which is the big part of the agenda, is the scrutiny review of the Ofsted report and action plan 2020. I mean, obviously there's been a delay on this due to COVID. You know, we should have been probably discussing this way back in March, April time. But I would like to put formally on record to the Scrutiny Committee, you know, our congratulations actually to all the council officers, council staff, and just everyone involved in this Ofsted report. It's a fantastic achievement, you know, from the journey of requiring improvement to outstanding. That's fantastic, and you know, a great result for Telford and Wrekin. So big thanks to everyone, and also to the cabinet members that were involved. You know, it's, you know, being sort of cabinet member for education is a big job and quite a responsible job. So I'd like to put on record to thank Councillor Paul Watling and obviously Councillor Shirley Reynolds, who's obviously still with us, who put an enormous amount of work in. So big thanks to them. I know how passionate they all are, you know, the council officers, staff and cabinet members about education. So well done, everyone. Members will be aware, obviously Joe Britton's with us tonight, and Joe is taking the reins over from Clive Jones, who's retiring soon, and we all know Clive has done an absolutely great job, you know, in that role as you know, Director for Children and Family Services for Telford and Wrekin. So I wish him all the best. I know you're there, Clive. I can't quite see you on
Thank you.
Computer, but thank you very much for all the hard work you've done. And obviously, congratulations to Joe. You know, he's got a mammoth task as well. And also mentioning Heather Loveridge, who took retirement recently. Heather did a great piece of work as well. So I think we just needed to say a big thanks to all those people that were involved in, you know, that Ofsted report. Now, just you will all had a copy of the report and read through it. So I don't know, Joe, whether you want to give sort of an update on it and just give us a view, or Shirley come in, just you know, what your thoughts were.
I'm happy to start it off and then hand over to Joe, if that's all right.
Thank you, Shirley. Yes.
Yeah. I just want to really say thank you for inviting me tonight to share the Ofsted judgment. It does seem like a long time ago since we had that judgment, especially with COVID. I think life has just been at such a different pace. But I think in order to fully understand where we are, it's helpful to set the scene of the journey. During the last 4 years since the last Ofsted inspection, Labour administration has invested an extra nearly 14 million in family support, and that has made a clear difference to help us get where we are. We've got a very clear, ambitious vision for our vulnerable children and families in Telford and Wrekin, and we did endeavour to deliver excellent children's services to ensure we were providing excellent services that benefited the children and their families. I'm really proud as a Cabinet member to be able to say our children's services are outstanding. Those 9 words encapsulate 9 years of hard work and dedication by our staff, our parents, our carers and other partners. We are the only authority in the West Midlands and North West of England to achieve this fantastic judgment, and we're the first council outside of London that's gone from requires improvement to be good in 2016 to outstanding. And I think, you know, it takes us a minute to think about that, but that is one heck of an achievement. The remarkable accomplishment really, as you said, reflects years of hard work by our officers, our staff. It was a clear focus on improving services. It's been a council-wide effort. We are ambitious and we still want more for families, but we are very clear in our aspiration, and it's about improving outcomes for vulnerable children and families. We will honour our manifesto pledge to protect, care and invest in families right across the borough. We're incredibly proud of our workforce, and it's the role that they have played in achieving this outcome. We could not have done it without them. They're very committed and dedicated. They are professional, and if you read the report, the professional example of their exceptional practice was evidence in the report, and Ofsted actually made comment on it. And, you know, I think that there can't be a higher accolade for any professional body when actually you've got Ofsted inspectors reporting on how good your practice is. They deliver high quality social work, we care about and we invest in the staff. And over the last few years, we've improved our social workers' recruitment and retention rates. And I think that is fundamental to having good children's services. You've got to have regular, reliable, committed staff and not rely on agency staff, which a lot of other local authorities do. We attract staff and we keep our staff, and we support them by providing high quality training and excellent support and supervision. And it's the staff that make the difference every day to children's lives across Telford. It's the most important thing that they do, and we could not provide that outstanding service without them. And I really can't stress enough how this is the staff's achievement, and we've really got to acknowledge that. Ofsted's words are loud and clear in Telford and Wrekin. Children are cared for and they're cared about. Those few words have such meaning that we provide a service for every child that we'd welcome for our own children. Now, obviously, whilst we're very proud of our achievements, we haven't lost sight that Ofsted asked us to look at the reporting of the management decisions. They gave us an action point, and I'm sure if I hand over to Joe now, Joe will be able to provide more further detail on this action plan. I am very aware of the work Joe's team has already done. We submitted our action plan, a very, very detailed action plan, very, very quickly to Ofsted. And I'm sure if I ask Joe, she can fill you in on some of the details. But I know we've gone over and above what was asked, which is what we want to do with our children's services. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can, I'm having a few problems, I have to say, in terms of ICT, so I hope that you can hear me and possibly see me, and people
You're
are nodding.
ghosting a little, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I do look like I'm a ghost, but I can assure you I'm here. You know, in terms of following up on what Shirley said, really, we're extremely proud of our social work staff, and obviously you can see very clearly the impact that their hard endeavours have had in terms of improving the lives of children and young people. And touching on a couple of things that Shirley said, really, I think what I was so pleased about was really the very clear words really within the inspection report around our Kate team, children abuse through exploitation team, in terms of contextual safeguarding. They really did comment on the high quality social work in that regard, and the impressive range of specialist services that we had, and that staff at all levels, and I think very much in terms of our value base, really they found that they were valued and very well supported, and that we really had worked hard as a whole team, as a whole service, as a whole council, really on really working hard on transformative vision for our services for children and their families. I think what was really powerful was that they felt that was sustainable, and they could see sustainable improvement in that regard as well. So in terms of the inspection, obviously that lasted for 3 weeks. The report came out, as you know, and that's reflected within the body of the narrative within this report before you in terms of timescales. We came out with one area cited as an area that needed to improve the most. So we still got a good judgment in that regard, but that was the quality of recording in children's plans and at key management decision points. So we actually came away with one action out of the whole of the report, which I think we did look at it actually, is quite a rare occurrence. Even other outstanding authorities rarely came out with one. A number of them had 3 or 4. So I hope everybody can still hear me. I'm struggling a little bit. Brilliant. So you should have at the back of your documents the action plan that was submitted to Ofsted in a very timely fashion. We had 70 days after the publication of the report, but we submitted this to Ofsted. You'll see that the outcome obviously is for us to improve our management decisions and clear recording, and you'll see within the actions some of the actions that we've set out within the action report that will assist us in doing that. We are complete in many regards, and if you look at the dates due, we still have some lead-in time for some of those things. So I don't know if Darren Nibbs hasn't been introduced, I don't think, but he's our interim director for children's safeguarding, and he might want to take us through some of the actions and some of the work that's been going on. But what I can say is that we're quite ahead in terms of our management oversight to the system, particularly in terms of the child protection plan for 6 months that's set out within the report, and in terms of those children who have to have an agency decision for adoption, we've moved forward in that regard as well. I don't know, Darren, whether you wanted to come in on anything specific, because obviously a lot of these dates due are towards the end of the year in terms of fulfilling these actions, but I know that we do have some significant move forward around the improvement around note taking at panels, and I know you've been working hard around that, and that had got a completion date due at the end of this month, and that might be useful for people to hear about. Darren, do you mind?
Okay, Darren.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to reiterate what Jo's been saying, there has been a significant amount of work since the Ofsted inspection, taking stock of key decision making in relation to children and where they are most appropriately recorded on their files, so that's more visible. In relation to some of the key decision making forums that we have, we are now making sure that we have formal minute takers at all of those meetings, so that a level of discussion from that meeting, so the rationale behind decision making is recorded, and those are then reviewed by the decision maker themselves to ensure that they're satisfied with how that discussion has been captured, and that they feel that the decision for that child is accurately recorded. As a result of some of those systems changes, what we will embark on is a period of review to provide assurances to ourselves as service leaders that the changes that we've made have had the intended outcomes in terms of the Ofsted Action Plan, and most importantly, the decisions that we make for children are clearly recorded on their files as per the recommendation from Ofsted.
Right, thank you for that, Darren, and apologies for not introducing you as well. My apologies for at the beginning of the meeting. Right, if there's nothing else, obviously a question I would like to ask, I probably will go into questions unless there's anything the officers want to say. I think the key one is obviously we've got outstanding as a council, and it's about that sustainability and maintaining that, you know, outstanding status. You know, are there sort of plans in place or to be able to do that?
I think, Chair, we carry on with that relentless eye on improvement, and we carry on with our improvement journey, Chair, and that doesn't change one iota, really. I mean, obviously, we're absolutely thrilled with that outstanding judgment, but we continue on our journey of improvement to deliver outstanding services for our children and families in Telford. We're relentless, really, in terms of our focus on high quality services, and that will continue, and we do that through rigorous quality assurance systems that we have in place, and our performance data sets that we review regularly. That was picked up by Ofsted inspectors as an area of strength, that we listen really carefully to the voice of our children, the voices of our young people, and the voices of our care leavers, and we seek to continue to have a very strong corporate parenting offer. Something else that the inspectors picked up within their report, that we care for our staff. Staff care is really, really important. Officer care is really important, and we can see that still reflected within our retention figures. Our agency figures are low, and in terms of our recruitment, and so we, you know, staff care is really very important, and the voice of our staff is something that we're listening to all of the time. We're keeping our staff engaged, we're keeping moving forward, we are relentless in terms of that. Our projects and our project officers are working really, really hard in terms of our new initiatives. So in terms of family safeguarding, which people might know as the Hertfordshire model, the pause button has been taken off that now by DfE, and we're motoring forward with our partners in Hertfordshire to embed that model of working with children and their families, and that's very much a multidisciplinary model where we're working with families and attending to adults with multidisciplinary teams, using a technique called motivational interviewing. So this really will see further improvements, and is evidence-based to reflect that in terms of positivity for our families and for our children, really. So that's just an example of our endeavours in terms of ongoing improvement, and we're rigorous in terms of the detail, and we're rigorous in terms of communication within the organisation and within the services as well. And I think we listen to children, we listen to their voices, and I think obviously that's central to absolutely everything we do, and we continue in that regard, and we can't carry on. This has been absolutely fantastic outcome for us, but it's just part of the journey. We continue in the way that I've described, which I hope has been helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. Are there any sort of questions? I've got a couple of that I want to raise, but just open it up to the floor a bit. Anyone would like to ask a question? Jane, Councillor Greenaway. Just take off mute.
I think I've put my hand down this time.
Cheers, thanks.
I just wanted to ask Joe, because obviously you're the best person to ask, in relation to the report, we've got numbers 14 and 27 that are it's in response to, I suppose, partnership working, and particularly to the specialist support that's available, the mental health and drop-ins, etc. And obviously that it appears to be a lot better than it was, and I'm wondering about that support from those partner organisations. How much does this play into the report? I know that obviously the council will ultimately try to get everything in place for those youngsters, but we know that there were problems with the mental health support that we were actually able to access. So I'm assuming that situation has improved, although it's not really part of this. But
well, no, I think, Jane, obviously for children in terms of their emotional health and well-being, we all know how important that is. And something, obviously, for example, schools are attending to, particularly at the moment with children returning to school, for example, after long periods of being away from that environment. So it is critical to children's health and well-being, and we have worked really hard in terms of engaging with our partners in that regard, and developed our services with them. I think we challenge one another, and I think there's those open and frank discussions. But certainly within the Ofsted inspection, which was really intense, as you can imagine, they do take into account partnership relationships and partnership activity and impact on children in that way. So I think there's always more work to do. And certainly there's some specific pieces of work that Darren's been picking up around children's mental health and the panel that we run with schools, Darren, I'm thinking there. So I'm not saying it's all perfect, so I don't think anything is. We're all striving to achieve much more improved things for children, but certainly Ofsted felt that children were benefiting from a range of services, from preventative services really early on in the child's journey, through to more critical services if they needed them, and they felt that they were available to children, and that they were right and that they met their needs. But clearly there's always an eye on that detail and more to do. And we would always want to see improvement. Of course we would. I don't know if Darren had got anything more to add, because he's more intimately involved in that just now.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yeah, just to bring some of what Joe was talking about together, we have made huge strides forward in terms of our partnership approach to the agenda around children and young people's emotional and mental health needs. What we now have is a multi-agency, multi-partnership panel where schools can refer in around a child or young person's emotional well-being, mental health, and all stakeholders consider the information presented and look at what it is they're able to offer from their agency perspective. So for some young people, that might be that it does require a formal referral through to mental health services. But what we're seeing through that approach is the vast majority of children and young people that are presented, their needs can be met at the right time by the right agency through specialist support that is delivered through their own school by people that they know, with a range of expert kind of consultation and guidance from other local authority services or from the wider partnership. So we're really pleased in terms of how that's working. But we do know there's more to do, and we are committed to the agenda around children and young people's mental health.
Yeah, I just really wanted to highlight that, because I know it's always been an issue for Scrutiny, is, you know, you're only as good as the support services in place, and that's always been something that's been uppermost in our minds, I must admit. There was one other, if I may, Angela, while we're talking about it. There's a couple of comments regarding, I'm just looking at my notes. There was a couple of improvements made in the process, I understand, and I don't know whether that comes into your in plan that you've already addressed, and that was number 16 and 17, and that was in relation to the children experience chronic neglect. There were some improvements there, that you made changes from the senior managers, and there was also another one about the senior leaders' immediate changes to the assessment process to ensure that the care is offered as an option where 16 and 17-year-old homeless. I just wondered if we've had sight of that or through this sort of improvement plan, and what that might look like.
Okay.
I think it's an ongoing one, Joe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it is. I think we've spoken before in terms of neglect, very definitely, and I think certainly in terms of the inspection experience, we actually, I mean, part of the inspection is about a learning process as well. and we were in deep discussions with inspectors and had some really good conversations really. And what we were able to do as part of that inspection process was to look and see, actually, yeah, there's some issues there we're picking up, but we looked at the pre-proceedings. I think that's what you're referring to at point 16, and we made some small changes there in terms of strengthening that process. Pre-proceedings is what it says on the tin really, is when we talk about pre-proceedings, that's before we initiate proceedings and before matters go into court. And we work really, really hard as part of our pre-proceedings pathway to keep children out of court, to keep children at home, not subject of court intervention or oversight. And so we talked very much with the inspectors about how we looked at how we used our pre-proceedings, and we just made some tweaks. And I mean, they were really, really pleased by that we were already onto it, that we were already looking at making tweaks in terms of the process. So I think that the end oversight was strengthened essentially, and the reporting was strengthened, and we were able to demonstrate, I think, as a service, that we were receptive to feedback in that regard, and that we made changes there and then. And actually, they were really, really impressed with that. They didn't find that we were defensive or anything like that. That we said, well, yeah, we're onto it. We're going to do this, and we did it during that period of time. And they actually were. I think that they put us in a very positive light, because that's the way we've operated really. We see something and we do something about it, collectively and collaboratively. The same about the point 17 in terms of the risk of section 20 accommodation. We simply changed part of a process that made sure that all those 16 and 17-year-olds were going to be routinely offered section 20 accommodation. They found the majority of young people weren't. Were, and a couple where they couldn't quite see that, and we dug a bit, and it was actually on the records, just not explicit enough. We've made some changes in terms of the process, and we actually did that with it whilst the inspection was going on, and they were really pleased about that. They were just pleased that we were receptive in that regard. I mean, clearly we weren't far off, because we got an outstanding inspection outcome, so it was really making tweaks. But I just think by acting as we did, they just felt that was indicative of a system that wanted to learn, wasn't defensive, and wanted to improve. And we're already onto it, Jane, really. So that kind of is where we're at with those two things, really. Quite fluid, made the changes during the actual inspection, but they weren't major changes, obviously.
No, I was just interested to find out how that obviously it benefits all of them actually. Absolutely. If you do it as you're going along. So thank you, Chair.
Right, thanks for those comments, Jane. Very good. Councillor Fletcher, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I read the report in detail, and it's very clear and concise and very understandable. When I look at the Ofsted action plan provided to us, it seems to contain a number of abbreviations like CPAG, POD, etc. And it doesn't say actually what those mean, which is, to my mind, not clear and concise enough for members or anybody reading it to understand. That's the first thing I like to make. The second point is that this Ofsted action plan is part of the Children and Family Services Improvement Plan 2021. Are we going to be allowed to look at that? Thank you. Did
you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I caught. Sorry, I'm struggling, but I caught some of what Councillor Fletcher was saying. I think we're talking about abbreviations, and absolutely, what we can do in terms of that is reflect what they stand for. So, in terms of CPAG, that is a Child Protection Action Group, where we're looking at our children included on child protection plans. In terms of PAG, that's Permanence Action Group, where we're looking at our children who are looked after currently and are subject of permanence plans. I'm looking at other things, but certainly, Councillor Fletcher, we can make that change and perhaps put a little bit of a table alongside that. In terms of QA meetings, I can see on page 37, that's quality assurance meetings. On page 37, PLO is a public law outline that I was referring to previously when speaking to Councillor Greenaway, just in terms of the pre-proceedings pathway. So that's what that is referring to. On the final page, on page 38, KIC is children in care. So we can certainly remedy that fairly easily, so that for any reader, they will understand at least what those abbreviations stand for. Those groups, CPAG and PAG, are very much where the work is happening. They're the operational groups that will be pursuing the actions that are set out within the plan. The same with the PLO subgroup as well, in terms of the public law outline. Quality assurance meetings are there to explain what they are. And I'm just noticing on the back, ADM is agency decision maker. And an agency decision maker is a person within the organisation that makes that final decision as to whether a child is suitable to be adopted or not. I've been agency decision maker. Darren will now pick that up for me on an interim basis, but I still undertake that role as well currently. So just for clarity, really, that's what those things, those acronyms stand for, if that's helpful for everybody. And then I didn't pick up the second part, but I could see there was further conversation going on. I do apologise, right. I can't hear that well.
It's all right. The second part was that this Ofsted action plan is part of the Children and Family Services Improvement Plan. Are we going to be allowed to have a look at that and review and consider it?
I mean, certainly in terms of our service plans, which that kind of refers to, they've all been updated and would be available for people to consider and look at. We have that improvement plan, as I've said, and articulated and referred a little bit to our improvement journey and what that looks like. Obviously, we have those things that we're working to. So we have a plan for all of those subgroups that I've just talked to you about that feeds into the overarching plan. They're very long and they're quite detailed and they're very operational. So I probably would leave that there if that's something that people would want to see and find helpful. But obviously, we today have been asked to talk about the Ofsted inspection report and the action plan that went alongside that, with the one recommendation that was made. So I guess I would come back to Chair really in terms of that, in terms of thinking about that further.
Thank you very much indeed for your reply.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's something possibly we could look at, you know, in the future, if the committee so wished. Everyone would be in agreement with that. Yeah. Okay, doke. Thank you. I know Anthea's put her hand up, but I've got Janice on as well. Anthea, was this reference to what Councillor Fletcher is raising?
It was, yes, it was, Chair. It was just in terms of if the committee wants to see the Family Service Improvement Plan, then that's something that can be dealt with through the work programming for the forthcoming municipal year. So we'll make a note of that as officers and bring it at the appropriate time when work programming takes place. Okay,
thank you, Anthea. Right, I know Councillor Janice Jones has got a hand up.
Hi.
To say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and going back to the acronyms there, I know they change on a regular basis. So if we can make sure they're kept up to date as well. My main question here was to ask how COVID has affected any progress or developments you had hoped to make. And has it increased our numbers of children taken into care?
Okay, I mean, certainly COVID has had a significant impact in terms of children and families' lives. And I guess we've all got our own stories to tell about that, because it's affected each and every one of us sitting around the table today. So it's clearly affected the way in which we provide our services for children and families. But I'm pleased to say that when lockdown came into being, we quickly risk assessed all of our children's cases in terms of priority. Our children have continued to have contact with our children's social workers and social care staff on a regular basis. We have ranked all of the children's cases in terms of risk and review those on a weekly basis to see what that looks like for that child and for that family. Any visits that we made and make and continue to make, we undertake risk assessments prior to visiting with the family. These are all recorded on the children's file. We've worked virtually. So what it has opened up for a lot of us is another world, and perhaps a bit of an insight into the children's world anyway, that perhaps some of us are more unfamiliar with. We've engaged really, really well and really positively with our children in a virtual manner. And that's either through means like this and through lots of other media in terms of that kind of way of working, really. So we've had WhatsApp conversations, we've had Teams conversations, and we've had lots and lots of different ways of working directly with children. We've had best guidance and get best practice guidance published from the Chief Principal Social Worker in England that we have worked to in terms of best practice for engaging with children in the virtual world, and we found that to be really, really successful. I think a lot of children and young people like the fact that they are feeling more in control in that in terms of conversation. They feel it's more accessible. They feel we're very accessible. So there's quite a lot of learning really in terms of going forward, perhaps about a more blended approach, but certainly a virtual approach of working with our families has been quite positive. We've got more in family engagement, for example, with child protection case conferences, and parents and carers have felt that we can engage more positively in this way. I think they feel less inhibited and feel perhaps sometimes a little freer to talk, and that's a feedback that we've been getting. So straying off the point slightly, but certainly we've evolved with it. We've worked really, really hard to keep our staff safe and our children and families safe through this period of time, and we've worked really, really creatively, and we've learned a lot in terms of perhaps how we might engage with children differently going forward. Our numbers around referrals and contacts into our Family Connect service were slow. And I think that was a national picture as we embarked into and moved into the pandemic. They were slower and they were reduced, but picked up and have picked up now significantly as we're coming out of lockdown. We made great efforts during that period of time to engage with partners, to understand and ensure that they were having the contact they should be having under their safeguarding duties and responsibilities in terms of seeing children and families, and really, really tested that out. We also had, and you might have seen it, a significant comms campaign to engage with children and young people so that they would report in if they were concerned about one of their peers or one of their friends. So we worked really, really hard to make sure that the doors were always open. We're seeing the increase in demand back to as we were really before COVID, and we're expecting to see probably a bit of a spike, and we're not quite sure what that's going to look like once children are back into school, when they start to have a chance to talk to teachers and to tell their stories. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like, but we're making preparations in that regard as well. In terms of our children in care, our children in care numbers remain very, very steady throughout lockdown. So that's 6 months. They didn't increase terribly much. They didn't go down, but they didn't increase terribly much. What we're seeing now is a slight increase, and that's due to the impact that COVID has had on courts. So courts have not been able to move forward as quickly in terms of some final hearings for our children, where final orders would have been made and then children would have come out of care. But I'm pleased to say that we're starting to see those court hearing dates are being made now, so those things are gradually being unlocked, and then I'm hopeful that those numbers will balance out again. But certainly it's been a challenging time, but our staff have continued to stay motivated and very, very committed. We've continued to have staff briefings. We've had a staff briefing with over 150, 160 members of staff. Shirley was there and he's nodding. It went really, really well. And we engaged with a really, really big staff group and we had fantastic attendance and we've continued to do that. And we've had coffee mornings and joined, I've certainly as a senior manager, joined in conversations with social workers and team managers to keep in touch. And we've had those regular keep in touch meetings with our staff as well. So I think we've done a lot. That probably doesn't encapsulate absolutely everything. But we really, really were very quick to respond and meet the needs of our children and young people in very testing times, I think, for us all, really.
It's brilliant. Well done to you and the team. Do you feel you've had all the support that you need?
I think we've been extremely well supported. I mean, we really, really have, by within the council and by members, by community, by families and by children. Actually, we've had a lot of good feedback. I think we have. I mean, there's no doubt it's been challenging. So we would have, particularly for particular areas of the business around schools, particularly. So, you know, from the DFE, we've been getting regular updates in terms of changes around practice, around guidance, and what we've had to do as a system is really pull together to be able to meet some of those demands and changes, and we've had to be really responsive. So that has been hard and that has been a challenge, but we've been able to do that. And I think when we went into lockdown, we were, and I'm not being complacent because we absolutely cannot afford to be, but we were in a relatively good place. And so I guess we move forward with really motivated staff, with a lot of commitment and a lot of commitment from partners, members, full council. So I feel we've been well supported, but there's no doubt it's been a very challenging time for us all and for children and our families out in the communities.
Right, thanks for that, Jo. You okay with that then, Janice? You're okay with that question? Are there any more questions that members want to raise within the report? I mean, the question I was going to raise, which is the one that Janice raised anyway, which was about COVID and being able to manage, you know, it's sort of, I suppose it's, you know, about the assessments such as the pre-birth assessments,
yes,
and how they were taken, you know,
yes,
at the time,
yes,
and also areas like children exposed to domestic abuse, you know, those vulnerable areas which are sort of, you know, slightly out of, you know, the window really to look at, you know.
yes.
But you know, I just wondered how you were able to manage with those. I know on the sort of domestic abuse side, I was sort of supporting some families around that during COVID, from the Freedom Programme side of things, you know, so they were felt very vulnerable. So, you know, we felt vulnerable. You can imagine sort of vulnerable groups, how they felt during COVID, really. But there was that support there, you know, but I just, you know, there's still out there, aren't there? You know.
Yes, absolutely. And I just think, you know, it was giving support in a different way, in an accessible way, reaching out, as I've said already, in terms of some of our comms, being really clear about what was available. In terms of our performance around assessments, we've continued to have good performance in that regard, in terms of timeliness. In terms of pre-birth, we've engaged with mums, with prospective parents virtually. And obviously we've still been doing our agency checks, so it's a whole system endeavour when you're trying to support you know, pregnant women where there might be worries or concerns, and so that has continued, and we've continued with the face-to-face visits, you know, where we've been able to, initially we've had our PPE on, our staff have undertake a risk assessment every time they visit, so we really have continued to do our absolute utmost to engage the most vulnerable groups. But there's absolutely no doubt we will start to see perhaps some stories from children, from families coming to the fore as we come out of lockdown and go into school. But I feel schools are really well prepared to listen to children's stories, to really attend to their emotional health and their well-being, and they have really good relationships with our children, and staff are really invested in them within our schools. So there's no doubt going to be challenges ahead, but we've done our absolute utmost to continue to engage, sometimes virtually, face-to-face, but we've continued with that engagement in a positive way.
All right, thanks, Jo. And also, just looking, one of the reports was on about the positive change to in-house marketing and ensuring active recruitment for foster and adoptive carers.
Yes,
it's been really noticeable, and just a big shout out to them, really. You know, the comms team, and it has been really, really good.
Yes, I mean, we had an active, you noticed clearly, we had an active campaign for our foster carers during COVID, and we were so successful. And I think it perhaps COVID gave people, and continues to, time to reflect and time to make choices and perhaps changes in their lives. And we certainly had a really good and successful recruitment campaign, a brilliant comms message that went out there, really effective in terms of that, and very, very professional. And actually, we've assessed people that came forward during that time, and they're going through those periods of assessment now in terms of becoming foster carers for Telford and Wrekin, which is really, really brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. So I'd make a comment on that. Are there any more questions from members then? And before we close down on the Ofsted report, I think we've got to make some recommendations, vote on some recommendations, Anthea, haven't we?
That's right, Chair. At items 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 of the report. So the first two are just for noting, but the third one is asking the committee to support that there's monitoring from this committee of the Ofsted action plan. And Chair, I would suggest that you agree when you would next want to see it. Perhaps Jo may have a view on that.
Yeah. So I presume that we agree as a committee those recommendations then. So if you can just to put a hands up on those recommendations, thank you very much. Or 2.3 anyway, we have to agree on, don't we? Have to vote on, and that's notes and support. I'll just read it out. Notes and support to request by Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee to monitor implementation of the action plan. So just so members are aware. Jo, when would be the best opportunity to do that?
I mean, looking at our dates due in terms of our work streams coming to fruition, really, in terms of our actions, most of those dates are towards the end of December. And so I'm wondering whether we look perhaps towards the beginning of next year, really, if that's helpful, January, February time. Where we can then talk about what we've accomplished during the next few months, really. So perhaps, I don't know, February time to be helpful, Chair.
Okay, yeah. Committee happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, February. Okay. Thanks very much. If we can make a note of that, Anthea, for it to go on to the work programme. That would be good.
Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Well, that finishes that agenda item. I'm sort of conscious that the officers probably had a very, very busy Thursday, because Thursday is busy. One more agenda item. So if Darren and Jo and Clive and Shirley, if you would like to, come off the meeting now and go and
Chair.
Eat.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This evening.
Okay.
Very much
Thank you
appreciated.
so much. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right. I suppose the next item on the agenda is Chair's report, which I suppose is just to really, I suppose, look at the work and where we are with things, and look at whether it needs updating. So Anthea, I don't know if you could sort of possibly talk us through that, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the first thing to say for members, and this is a conversation I've been having with each scrutiny committee, is clearly COVID's had an impact on the work that we've been undertaking, because you've just heard from Joe in this area of work, there's been a lot of focus on looking after our most vulnerable children during a very difficult time. So that's naturally impacted on our normal day-to-day work, which means that the work for this committee has been delayed and is now being picked up now that we're back into some sort of normality. So that's had an impact on the work programme. Also, you heard that there's a change in terms of the executive director and Joe having taken over with Clive's impending departure. So that's given us an opportunity just to revisit the work programme and just take a sense check, if you like, as to whether or not it still applies and whether or not the timescales that we were hoping to achieve are still achievable. And I think in light of what I've just said, there are some changes to be made. The first item on the work programme is down as an item regarding children's safeguarding and improving practice. And having discussed this with Joe, this is about the Hertfordshire model, which she mentioned in the briefing that you've just had, and about implementing the Hertfordshire model. Having spoken with Joe, there's been an impact on the timescales for starting that, but they're aiming to have implementation around May next year. So, Chair, what I would propose is, first of all, that we just change the title slightly to make it clear we're talking about the Hertfordshire model.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that we change that to family safeguarding and then brackets Hertfordshire model, so that everybody understands what it's referring to. And that initially there's a briefing in May, and then a plan to review the impact that the Hertfordshire model has had on our service in 12 months' time after that. So around May 21, depending on how we get on with implementation, a briefing for this committee, and then a review, a substantive review in 12 months following implementation.
Yeah, I think that would be really good to have a presentation on the Hertfordshire model so we can all get in our heads. You know, we need to understand what it means, and then before we do a piece of work on it or look at it, you know, so that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next page of the work programme, the next item is children with learning disabilities, and this was around the services offered to children with special educational needs and disabilities and their families. Chair, you touched on the departure of Heather Loveridge, who was the Director for Education and Skills, and we've now got an interim director in place, Simon Wellman, who some members may know. He's only just come into post. And so, again, in discussion, it's suggested that there'll be an update from Simon, hopefully at the next committee meeting. So that would probably be November time, Chair, on this, and potentially a briefing around the belonging strategy at the same time. That we do need to have a conversation with Simon just to make sure he's comfortable with that proposed timescale. But at the moment, the indications are that that would be achievable.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's really important that we understand, you know, the belonging strategy, you know, the Hertfordshire model, and the sort of meaty pieces of that work that are presently being looked at. And I think if we're looking at it as scrutiny, we need to understand it. So yeah, I'm happy with progressing that. Thank you, Anthea.
The next item on the work programme is mental health provision for children and young people. And Chair, forgive me, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the one before that, but there was an agreement that we would ask the Health Scrutiny Committee to take the lead on that. So we have a letter ready to send to the Chair of the Health Committee to ask that they make sure that children's mental health is covered by that review. My understanding is it very much is going to be, and I've invited the Chair of the Health Scrutiny Committee to seek members of this committee should they have any workshop that they want support with it from a children's perspective. So with that one, Chair, it's very much dependent on the timescales for the Health Committee, but I would say that's watch this space in terms of that one, because it is an ongoing piece of work. In the wider context of the health agenda, that is a very big piece of work, with children forming a part of that. So that is ongoing. And Chair, the letter that's ready to be sent asks for an update and offering the members of this committee to participate in that piece of work.
Yeah, I know Kieran's drafting a letter, so I've had a sort of quick look at that, because I know that the committee sort of were really concerned about children's mental health. So I think, you know, doing some joint work on it with the health scrutiny would be good. So yeah, so we'll just wait to hear the response from Councillor Derek White, really, on what will happen, and, you know, perhaps some scoping on how we can be involved in it as a scrutiny committee. So.
Yes, Chair. The next item was the Care Leavers Covenant, and Chair, I've spoken to the officers involved in this, and again, COVID has had an impact, sadly, and much like some of the other scrutiny committees, I think that there is going to be a busy period of work coming up for this committee in the very latter part of this year and the start of next year. This item, officers believe that they would be able to present something to the committee probably December, January time. So, Chair, once we've got diaries coordinated, we'll be able to confirm that in more detail. But it's very much latter part of this year, very early part of next year for that item.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, obviously, you know, I think everyone's got to recognise that we're on catch up with COVID, aren't we? Really, right across, you know, right across the piece, you know, in all policy areas. So, but anyway. We're getting back on track. That's the main thing.
The next item, I think, is a hangover from a previous item, and that was travel support for children and young people. And Chair, if my memory serves me correctly, that was dealt with at a committee earlier this year. And forgive me, I think lockdown has given me no sense of time, but I think my memory suggests that it was pre-lockdown. And so I think that item's ready to be removed from the work programme, because my recollection and understanding is that this committee looked at it and were assured that the policy had gone through the proper processes, and actually it's now been implemented, and it's working in the way that you'd expect. If it suits this committee, what I can do is ask officers to keep it on a note for a future work programme in 12 or 18 months' time, to allow a review of the effectiveness of that policy to be undertaken.
Yeah, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, Chairman, that is something that Councillor Greenway and myself brought up earlier in the year, and it was gone through with the Cabinet member and Heather Loveridge as well. It was travel to school policy change, and that was dealt with then. They have implemented the change, even though some of us didn't agree with it. Thank you.
Yeah. So are we happy to, for this moment in time, to remove it from the work programme then? Because I'm sort of conscious that there's.
Yes, it is. It can be removed from the work programme.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next item, Chair, I think also needs to be removed. So that was bullying in schools, and the feedback from the senior management team was that the school bullying policies is actually a matter for the schools and is not within the remit of this council. And there was a discussion at a previous meeting, I believe, about the ability of this committee to be able to get the documents that they would need from the schools, where it would make for an effective item. So, Chair, on that basis, and bearing in mind you've got quite a full work programme coming up in the latter part of this year, I'm suggesting that that's removed from the work programme.
Yeah, I'm happy for that to go ahead. Is the committee happy? Yeah, I think so, because we aren't going to have a meaningful sort of scrutiny review of it if we aren't going to get all the information, are we really? I think it's going to be skewed, so it's at this point in time, I don't think it would be, you know, effective sort of review to do really. But yeah, so I'm happy for, and I think the committee is happy for it to be removed.
Thank you, Chair. The next item is school exclusions, and again in discussion with Jo Britton, the new executive director, she feels that perhaps that's that's something that may be slightly too narrow. What she's suggesting is that the belonging strategy is something that covers not just exclusions, but a wider picture of children feeling like they belong in the school environment. So it's about inclusion, but it's also about much more than that. And so again, Chair, we're hoping that after discussion with Simon Wellman, when he's found his feet a little bit in his new role, that he'll be able to bring a briefing to this committee at the next meeting, and then as we go through the implementation and the embedding of the belonging strategy, there'll be work arising out of that this committee can get involved in. It goes hand in hand to some extent with the Hertfordshire model, so it seems sensible, Chair, for the committee to hear about both of those at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, would that be changed to the belonging strategy then? That's all.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch what you said.
Yeah, would that be changed to the belonging strategy, the name of that review? I think we had the exclusion, didn't we?
I think if this committee is happy with that, Chair, that would be the recommendation, because it widens the scope for this committee to get involved in.
Yeah, I think so. Is everyone happy with that? Committee happy with that? Jane, got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in there because I think that was probably one of mine from some time ago that we never got around to doing. I'm happy that obviously if it's going to be a part of the belonging strategy, because one of the major issues was obviously you may have a school exclusion purposefully. The concern was that those children that were excluded from school, you know, or removed from school for whatever reason, and that was the concern. So I think as long as that, you know, Joe has assessed that that is provided within that strategy, I'd be quite happy to do that. I certainly wouldn't want to see it removed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chair, just for assurance for Councillor Greenaway, the belonging strategy is about keeping children in school because they feel like they belong, and it's about the support we can offer, or part of it is about the support that we can offer to keep children feeling like they belong in school.
Yeah.
So I do think it very much suits what you were aiming for there, Councillor Greenaway.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
I think it's the penultimate item is educational attainment. This is simply the annual report that comes to the committee on educational attainment. It's on there to make sure it isn't lost within all of the work that the committee is doing. So that will come at its usual time towards the end of the academic year. Clearly this year has been a bit different, but in the normal way of the world, that will come, and we will bring it to the committee when we're in a position to do that. And then the final item, I'm just moving the page, I'm having some difficulties, forgive me. Oh. Kieran, I'm not sure if you can help because I can't seem to get onto the final page.
Bear with me 1 second.
I've got it, it's fine. It's the Local Safeguarding Children's Board annual report. So members might recall that the annual report comes to this committee regularly. So once it's gone to the Safeguarding Children's Board, it then comes to this committee. There has been a delay in that report because of COVID, and the committee hasn't met as the Safeguarding Board, hasn't met as regularly as it would normally. It's on the agenda for the Executive Board for the Safeguarding Children's Board in December, and then it will come to this committee following that. So that's just reinforcing what I said at the start, which is the latter part of this year, this municipal year. I think there's going to be quite a lot of work coming for this committee, Chair.
Right, thanks for that, Anthea. I think it was sort of raised about the sort of the Children and Family Service Improvement Plan as well, whether that would be, that's part of it, is it?
Yes, Chair. So the update to the work programme, the process for that will start probably the end of this year. So we'll be putting a call out for items, but I've asked Kieran to add it to our list of things for the next municipal year to be brought forward. So it won't be lost. And any discussions that this committee have about things they'd like to look at moving forward, we'll add to the list for the next work programme as it's created.
Yeah. Janice, you got your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as you mentioned educational attainment, how are we looking at people who are not willing to send their children for whatever reason back to school at the moment? Do we know?
Chair, are you happy for me to answer that?
Yeah, no problem.
I think, Councillor Jones, it's fairly early days at the moment. So some of the schools have only just opened today, but I'm not sure if Jo mentioned it. I don't think she did, but we are doing a piece of work this week to where we'll have contacted every school to this by the end of Friday to see how the attendance has been, and from that point, from the information that we gain, we'll then be able to do an assessment of the amount of children that are in school and get a sense of the scale of any problem, and from there there'll then be a programme introduced, or a plan introduced, if you like, to address some of those perhaps less enthusiastic people who may, for whatever reason, not be keen to attend. But the sense that we've got this week is that there's very good numbers, certainly above the national average, that we're seeing at the moment. So I'm not sure it's going to be a significant issue, but I'm sure when we speak with Simon about the next meeting, we can bring some information around that as well.
Yeah, that would be useful. Thank you, Anthea.
Thank you.
So I think that covers everything, doesn't it, within the work programme? So we've updated it tonight, which is good. I think we needed to do that. So I suppose the next thing really is just the date of the next meeting. We're looking at, I think, was it November, to have the date of the next meeting?
Yes, Chair. I'm hoping to get that in the diaries very soon.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think does any member want to raise anything? Because if not, I think we can close the meeting. No? No? Well, thanks very much for coming. I'm sure you found it, really informative. It's actually really good to get back to formal meetings again. I know we had an informal one, I think, beginning of August, but it's good actually to get going again with Scrutiny. So thanks very much for your support, everyone, and no doubt we'll catch up soon. All right.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.